Hey, you guys. I'm today here with Michael Tyrell. I came across his work through one of our team members who said to me, he's doing some really interesting work. I think this is going to be really beneficial for our community. And so when I first heard about what Michael does, which is healing people with music and frequency, I thought, that sounds a little far-fetched because I'm more like, give me the next food that's interesting. What's the next herb that's being used in China or Peru? I want to know about that research behind, what's the new strain of maca that's going to be out there healing women. That's really what is closer to my DNA. But then when she sent me more reference and then we got in touch with Michael and I saw the amount of research, but I think more importantly, the reviews, completely unbiased because it's on Amazon, and having like 4.5 or 4.8 stars and the hundreds, if not a couple of thousand reviews. And I thought, well, there's something really to it. And people really reporting incredible healing and transformations. And so I thought I would invite Michael here today to share a little bit more about what's going on, like what's the whole science behind frequency and how is it really going to help people? Hey, Michael, welcome.
It's an honor to be with you today, Magdalena.
So, as you can tell from my introduction, I'm a skeptic, right? And I think a lot of my, the followers in the Hormones Balance are generally skeptics, right? And so can we just dive straight into this in the beginning? Can you just tell us a little bit about what got you started on this? And really, what's the science behind frequency and sound that really can be so transformative for some people?
Great question. Well, first and foremost, being a musician, the first component is creating music, which is, as the old maxim says, it soothes the savage beast. It wasn't until later that I realized that there was something inherently wrong with music, which is kind of a bizarre, approach to look at music because it's so beautiful. But I realized that there was a calibration issue with music, and that being, without getting into a lot of the what you would call frou-frou or conspiracy science.
Yeah.
What actually really took place was that there was people that were trying to use frequency in a nefarious way and infusing it with music. So my approach was a little bit different. What I wanted to do was create a natural frequency, and by that, for your listeners, when you go to YouTube and you enter frequency, there'll be like 50 different ones that come up in an hour and 10 minutes, but it's created by a machine. It's called a frequency generator. And so back in the day, I'm probably older than you, but back in the day when the TV would go off at 1 a.m, you would hear boop, the sound, and it would drive you nuts. It would be like almost alarm to go turn off the TV. But actually what it was a test tone, a sine wave. But these people were manufacturing frequencies and then expecting people like you and I to want to sit there and listen to that. And I thought, I got to find a way to make these frequencies almost addictive to the body, to where you want to listen to it. So, and I don't tell many people this, but I want you to understand this. I took a lead crystal glass and incrementally filled it with water until it precisely and right on the money stopped the tuner for each of the frequencies that I was emulating. Then, like you do at a boring party, you run your finger along the glass and it starts to sing. And then I recorded that. And then on the other side, I recorded the Nashville Strings, a small quartet of, violin, viola, cello, bass. And then I recorded those two together. And then the musicians came in and we just played over the top of that music. So, if you ever saw Mary Poppins, the music would be like the spoonful of sugar, but the actual frequency is the medicine, and the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. People love to listen to this. But what's really happening is they're getting the frequency. And so you go, okay, frequency, let's demystify that and make it less frou-frou. Simple. You and I could not transmit. We could not have a communication. We could not understand much of the information we understand on our very first, when we talked for 5 minutes before. I'm starting to know you now because of the sound of your voice. What people don't understand about frequency is that in voice actuation, there's programs that take a baseline of your voice when you speak into it and feed it into a computer, which I actually have this program. And in 10 minutes, everything about your medical history pops out. When you had mononucleosis when you were 13, when you had this problem, it's no different than the growth rings of a tree. If you were to cut a tree in half, you can tell the years of drought, the years of plenty. You can tell when the tree was healthy, when the tree was on the verge of death. So what I'm telling you is that as far as frou-frou, it's just a very misunderstood, and even though it's a very ancient approach, it's something now that I'm very thankful for. People are starting to understand that this is an integral part, like breathing. We can't talk. Our words are frequency. Our thoughts, frequency. Hearing, frequency. Light in the room, frequency. So my big job first was to demystify this, and then to work with this. I primarily work with integrative medicine doctors, and I've been speaking regularly at the Dallas Academy of Integrative Medicine in Texas, as well as several different doctors' conferences and symposiums this year. Being the guy that's not the doctor puts me in not to mention they treat me with so much love. But secondly, I'm able to offer them a way of expanding their thought about, what can we do in our toolbox to help our people? Yeah. I don't tell people that what I do is the cure-all for everyone or everything. What you do, from what I've read, is outstanding work, and it's helped my own wife. But I offer another modality in the toolbox that can help people in some of the other ways that women and men need through relaxation and better sleep.
And I find it interesting what you said just now, because about the irritation of an irritating frequency, for example, there are specific sounds of certain people I cannot tolerate. I mean, that includes a few TV presenters, and I could never really understand that before. Why is it that person is actually making a lot of sense and making good points? I just cannot listen to her.
You cannot resonate with them. Mm-hmm. You can't resonate with them.
Right. So that's fascinating. So, what I find quite spectacular, like when I looked at the reviews, which are completely independent, because you can't fudge Amazon's reviews. And as a book author, I never tried, but I know for a fact you can.
And they don't take the bad ones out either.
Exactly. And you have, everything from insomnia to PTSD to people having hormonal issues. And so let's talk about some of the most effective, conditions that can benefit from the frequency. And I also noticed that, you have, when I look at your website, you have different frequency for different modalities, right? Or for different problems that a person has. Before you dive into this, I just want to reiterate one more thing. It's one of the tools in your toolbox you can bring into your life. For example, when you're striving for hormonal balance, I just want to make this clear. If somebody is living off highly inflammatory foods, is constantly inflamed, is highly toxic, is in a toxic relationship, has got stuff maybe from the past that is so present, it might help to some degree, but sometimes we get to resolve some of the things as well. But what is amazing about the thing that it can be a tool for some people, can be absolutely wonderful when they try it. So let's talk a little bit about the different frequencies for the different healing, and what kind of modalities can a music frequency heal.
Perfect. It doesn't matter whether it's a musical vehicle or whatever vehicle that you would use to introduce frequency to the body. A lot of integrative specialists might use a Rife machine. They might use a laser probe. There's other ways of introducing frequency to the human body. But all of them, if they're done properly, need an opening frequency. And the opening frequency is interesting because what it does, it gets the person, like you just said, to the place where they can receive healing. So much of this psychological component is shame and guilt. So many people feel guilty or ashamed about something. Like you said, there's all these unresolved things that happen. And then when your hormones are out of balance, that's exacerbated, obviously, especially if you're estrogen dominant. And then, because guys deal with this. I've been through this stuff. You need something that's going to bring you to a place, first of all, that gives you hope, but also a place where you feel worthy to be healed. And that you're willing to let go of some of that crap, like those feelings of, being ashamed of everything, or feeling guilty, or being in a relationship where somebody's dominant and then you always feel like you're not doing enough. Mm-hmm. So the opening frequency, which is called the open door for a reason on Wholetones, is a frequency that brings you to a place, first of amazing relaxation and peace. Like if you come home from a hard day and your nerves are frazzled and you sit on a couch, you put that on, you'll be in a Zen state pretty darn quick. And then you'll get to a place where your breathing starts to change. And then all of a sudden you realize, well, if my breathing's changing, I'm psychologically changing. I'm changing on a cellular level. There's more oxygen. And then before you know it, you're starting to think, you know what? I'm going to get better. that's the beginning of all of us. When we get to the place where we realize that we can love ourselves and that healing is possible and it is spontaneous sometimes. So 396 is the opening frequency, and that is the one that I recommend that everyone uses first before they proceed on to the other 6. But specifically, that one is great for guilt and shame, internal, like holding on to stuck emotions and stuff. It kind of helps open you up to the possibility that I don't always have to be this way.
So the skeptic in me is, and I know a lot of people, right now asking, how the hell did you know that 396 is the frequency for opening it up and, opening up the soul, the heart, and letting go of shame and guilt?
Well, first of all, that's a wonderful question. Second of all, there is a considerable amount of research out there, and there's also a lot of history about sulfurgy tones and some of how they work on a psychological basis. So there was some initial science, and then I've been blessed enough to be working with a group of guys here where I live in Florida for many, many years, and we have done all kinds of testing and work with people to see what affects them. The interesting thing about frequency is, though, like you would say, okay, 4 cents difference or 4 vibrations different, wouldn't make a big difference. But what I found in my research is that it makes a gigantic difference, because all of us, like your heart and my heart, there's a relative weight of that organ, but your atomic weight of your heart and mine would be different if we measured it, and everyone else for that matter. So I had the daunting task of trying to find out how can I see the most efficacy with a broad base of humanity. I mean, knowing that all of us are different on an atomic level. So what I did was, when I created those frequencies I talked to you about, I began to oscillate them with a gentle slope and a sweep, so it could reach more on both sides of the bandwidth of the atomic weight of each of the organs. And then your question is like, how did you know? A lot of things, some of the greatest discoveries I'm sure you found come by subtraction or by questions. You ask questions. And when you don't get an answer and nobody knows, that just drives me deeper into research to find out why is this important to me and why can't anyone answer my question? And so when I started digging in, I found that not only Royal Rife, but several other people that have dealt with what we would call vibrational or frequency healing corroborated what I was feeling in my heart about these particular frequencies. I mean, there was actual science for it, documented science for it, of some of the characteristics of that particular frequency. And then I moved on through there. Another thing to mention to your listeners is that all of this is mathematical, which that's very important, because it would be just like if your brother, sister, whoever that's in your bloodline, you're related to each other through blood. In mathematics, it's all about how it applies on the scale of Pythagoras, meaning when you deduce it to the lowest form, will it form a 3, a 6, or a 9? All of my frequencies are interrelated by mathematics. Another thing that kind of takes the frou-frou right out of this that most people don't know is somebody that nobody would question if he was on the earth today is Pythagoras. All of us that have done any research, physics and geometry, he's the benchmark of mathematics. However, what most people don't know about Pythagoras is that his main penchant and his greatest gift was music. He even created his own musical instrument called the monochord. And so what he did, and one of his disciples was Plato, by the way, so this guy is definitely in the upper food chain of intelligent beings. He created this 6-foot-long bed that one side was padded, and the other side was nothing but drone strings creating frequencies very similar to what I use. When someone had a psychological problem, an imbalance of some kind, depression, physical ailment, flu, cold, whatnot, he would get them to lay down on the top of this, and he would play the strings underneath their body and vibrate them. And some of the amazing stuff I've read about Pythagoras is that these people stayed with him because they believed in the science, but they also believed that every time they lay down on this thing and he would play these frequencies, they would immediately go into their bed and fall asleep and wake up in the morning and feel fine.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I have friends who have very mathematically gifted children, and all of them are musical geniuses as well.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's I can relate to what you're saying. So let's talk a little bit about the different frequencies and the different conditions that the ailments that frequencies can really help.
Sure. Now I can talk about some, but I can't talk about all, only because the government has a hard time with making claims. As you know, I have to work a thin line on that. But I will tell you the next one in our 7 series is called The Desert Soldier, and it's 417 Hertz. And for your listeners, Hertz is really simple. It's just the last name of the man that discovered being able to calibrate the amount of time that a body or a string would vibrate in 1 second. So when we say 417 Hertz, it just simply means that a string or a piece of mass would vibrate that many times per second. That's how we measure that bandwidth or wavelength. So with that being said, the second frequency is one of those things where I knew certain things about it, because you asked me that question before. It's like, how did you know? Well, there's certain things you can know. But when you release this in 168 nations, you find out, you take a marker if 100 people are responding to the same thing, and you, oh my God. For example, that particular frequency is great with procrastination, like amazing. And a lot of CEOs, huge Forbes, Fortune 500 CEOs are using this in their office every single day, because it basically, the way it works from a psychological standpoint is you don't put off today for tomorrow what you can do today. They're creatives. They're not having that 3 o'clock time where all the guys that work in the office are starting to get tired, need more coffee. They're moving through the day. The amount, one of the CEOs from a company called 5W in Manhattan told me, he said, we're putting out more creatives in one day than we used to in a whole week. So I wrote my book, and most everything I do that's creative, I play that frequency in the background when I'm working. And I find that it's almost like I'm writing without even thinking. So there's definitely that component there, Magdalena, but go ahead.
Let's talk about sleep, because I love the procrastination part, because that can help us get off caffeine, which is a huge dopamine booster, and that gets us to focus as well.
Correct.
So that's a great one to know. Let's talk about sleep, because that's something that so many people suffer from, and there's a huge correlation between sleep and hormonal balance, right? So
no question.
Yeah. So let's talk about the frequency and how is that helping with sleep?
Okay. There's 2 frequencies in that. Now I have a whole new program that's called Wholetones to Sleep, which I'll get to in a minute. But there's a couple of frequencies on the original 7, or the original Wholetones that we're speaking of. It's 396, the opening frequency, and 444, which is the main tuning. It's called the Key of David on the project. The big issue with sleep is, well, I told you I just got back from being with Dr. Oz again, and he said something that hit me so hard. He said, Michael, it doesn't matter what type of natural supplement you're taking or what allopathic prescription that you've been prescribed. If you're not sleeping a minimum of 6 to 8 hours a day, your body cannot heal. There's no way to reach homeostasis. And then, so my first thing was...
Can I just want to inject a sentence here, because there are a number of people who are big bashers of Dr. Oz. And no matter what your point of view on him is, I can tell you one thing from so many friends who got on Dr. Oz, is that their producers do their research like crazy.
I know them.
Any sentence. I'm just going to insert that in here.
Oh.
Nobody gets on like, he, as you know, there's been investigation around him. I still feel like he has done more good than he has done bad, any at all. But the most important thing is that he actually has, and actually I know one of the investigative naturopaths who works for him, who does investigative research and the background research on every guest who comes on, because they gotta be so tight in case like an investigation like that again comes up. So that's interesting what you're saying. Okay, sorry to interrupt you.
That's actually, and just a slight interjection is the sad part about a lot of that is, and I'm sure you run into this occasionally yourself. I've met you, so I know I can pick up on you now, and I think you're wonderful. And Dr. Oz, I heard terrible things about him. I've spent a lot of time with him. He's the most loving, giving man that I've met in a long time, and he's legit, and he loves me, and I don't pay him anything. He believes in what I do because he uses it. So my point being in that is a lot of times we judge by what we see on television, but that's like telling somebody about a great restaurant you never ate at. It really, you have to meet, right? You got to meet the person, get in touch with their spirit and find out if they're a jerk or if they're real or not. But so the sleep component, when he said that, and then I was just tooling up to push my whole this year's campaigning about helping people get sleep, because I know as a musician and working those 4 sets a night till 4 in the morning, what that did to me, and the interruption of the circadian rhythm and feeling like a zombie half your life. And then your hormones are out of whack and you're a mess. And until you can get like, and there was a whole lie for years about a sleep bank. You know, I didn't sleep tonight, but I'll make it up to, you don't make up sleep. When it's gone, it's gone. So what I tried to do, Magdalena, then is come up with particular frequencies that, which I have now on Wholetones of Sleep, that help you fall asleep quickly and keep you to sleep. And the problem with the original one was that people interpreted that it might have been for sleep. It was not. That would be just like if you created a cookbook, it's like, yeah, but I didn't create just breakfast food. I created meals for every hour. Yeah. Like with this, it's like people think because you make something because they felt comfortable that that's for sleep. It wasn't for sleep. It was for a myriad of different applications. But the one I created now was for sleep. It doesn't have any drums. It doesn't have any dynamics that'll wake you up in the middle of the night. It's MOR, straight across music. And there's a frequency on one of those that I actually wrote 2 lullabies. You know, the rest of them are traditional. And somebody wrote the tagline for us, and it was the best. He said, "This is the only song I've never heard the end of." Because 5 minutes they're gone, it's 30 minutes long. So the point is, if you can get someone to sleep, their bodies will begin to heal themselves. Yeah. You put your body in a place of homeostasis where in the genius of the creation and the creator, your body knows what to do. It starts to repair itself.
Yeah, and you know, and I've written so much about sleep and hormones that we don't even need to convince anyone. And you know, just on a very pragmatic level, you know, somebody who wakes up well rested after a good night's sleep, you know how that feels. No one needs to convince you. Right. And sleeping pills has its own side effects. You know, not to mention the fact that you actually never get into really good quality sleep. You never get into deep sleep when you're on sleeping pills. Right, and that impairs our detoxification, just our serotonin production, melatonin production, how we detoxify from estrogen. I mean, the list goes on, and I've written so much about it, so we don't even need to talk about the benefits of sleep. So let me ask you this, as I'm hearing you talking about this, does it matter what kind of equipment do you use to play that music?
No, that's a great question. And the answer is absolutely not. And here's why. Here's why. And again, instead of frou-frou, I actually have the documented research now. You can see the live blood cells and the 3D thermographic brain scan. It's kind of like, here's your brain on Wholetones. You can watch it with your own eyes and see it instead of somebody just writing about it. But the point, I guess, a lot of people ask me all these questions like, do I need to wear headphones? Do I need to wear in? It doesn't matter, and I'll tell you why. It's really cool. Like other therapies, if something's been proven to work on a cellular level, then you realize that Wholetones, basically the audible part is really about 10% importance. What's really important is what's happening in vitro. When you are doing a live blood cell and you're watching what happens when the music starts and you're seeing the cells in your blood in real time change, that's what the big deal is. So I tell people, don't worry about if it's great equipment, not so great equipment. It's going to work as long as the frequency is there, as long as it's, even when women are cleaning the house, like, what if I turn on the vacuum cleaner? I said, go ahead. What if I am not sitting in the room? I said, as long as there's a little bit of audio, even on a scale of 1 to 10 on the dial, 1. It can be in the background with your kids at home and your pets. If you have dogs that have separation anxiety or dogs that freak out when it thunders and lightnings or fireworks on the 4th of July. If you leave the first frequency, 396 on while you go out or while that's happening, they will not freak out. They will not shake. They will lay in their bed and they'll fall asleep. It's awesome.
Yeah. That's one of the things I saw with a lot of people's reviews is having these very anxious dogs and how much the music has helped them. Michael, tell us about a story that's like the most touching for you that you always remember about how music and frequency has helped them.
You know, there's so many that I get every single day. I've got one just today that I think it might be worth it. I mean, because this is more for the demographic that you're with. This one is from a woman named Robin McLaughlin. She said, for the past 2 years, I've suffered from extreme hormonal imbalances along with menopause. As a result, physiological panic attacks, adrenal wake-ups, and a whole host of other disturbing symptoms. I've been employing a natural approach with diet herbs, tinctures, natural progesterone, along with exercise, yoga, essential oils. While I have been slowly on the mend, it has been very slow, and I have felt stuck both physically and spiritually. I teach piano for a living and have been taking a long sabbatical because my symptoms became so severe. After 2 days of listening to Wholetones, I feel inspired to get moving and start teaching music again. I'm resting better, sleeping better. I know I'm being healed from the inside out, spiritually and physically. I started reading daily scriptures again, with Wholetones playing most of the day. I find it very calming, and I don't want to turn the music off. I'm confident that the hormonal adrenal imbalance is diminishing and will soon be a distant memory. Panic and anxiety are no longer my constant companions. I feel more of a sense of calm and well-being with each passing day. I get maybe 100 of those every morning. I get up. What I do every day, I get up, I get my coffee, I get my Kleenex. Because not only women, but a lot of women, but people in general, like you said, when that many people contact you, or when you have like hundreds of these coming in, it moves you. It means, hey, I might not have all of the answers, but I'm doing something to make people's lives a little bit better.
Yeah, awesome. So, another question that comes up is, I have seen this with food, with herbs, with different therapies, and points back to something called bioindividuality, where every person is a little different, right? People, for example, with trauma, some people respond really well to EMDR. Another person will get a lot of relief not from EMDR, didn't do anything for them, but they start tapping and they get these revelations. Yeah. And the same thing with food. We have, in food, we have this term paradoxical response. And this happens with drugs as well. It happens with herbs. Ashwagandha, for example, for some people, it can be a really wonderful way of kind of like pick me up throughout the day, puts me to sleep, right? And a lot of other people too. So different responses to the same stimuli, right? Or to the same substance. Do you see paradoxical responses to music? So for example, you've written stuff for sleep. Do you find that a person might be actually feeling particularly awake?
With most of the sleep ones, honestly, I have to say that one, the Wholetones to Sleep, the newest project's been pretty much sonic Valium. That one's pretty much been crossed the line. Everybody's like, just to give your listeners an idea, this is how dumb, I do stuff that's really stupid sometimes, and I don't mind telling people. I had a listening party for the new project, not thinking. So I have a room full of people. I put the music on in 5 minutes. Everybody's like this. So it's like the most exciting party in the world. I put a whole room to sleep in 5 minutes. You see what I mean? So that one, yes. The other one, totally. Like you'll put on a certain frequency and somebody will say, well, that one made me feel energized. And most of them, well, that's funny because I took a nap. So with some of the original 7 frequencies, I do find some of the paradoxical response.
So we have a link down below to get the sleeping that comes in what? Is it in the DVD, CD, or online downloads? Like what's the
all
form?
The above and more.
Okay.
So you can get the digital download. You can actually get the hard copy. And by the time that all of your friends are seeing this, we're actually going to have a device that sounds like a Bose wave radio that's very affordable. That all you do is turn it on. It does everything. It sits by your bedside.
Like preloaded, basically.
Powered speaker. Yeah.
Right. Perfect. Okay. That solves it. That way you can power down your phone, your cell phone, and not. Yeah, that's great. And then I would also want to put a link for other things. So, not everybody has a problem with sleep. In fact, I will tell you that for so many women who have made dietary changes, their sleep has significantly improved, so much so that I actually circulated around my team, and I'm like, I want you guys to try it out. And everybody was like, give me something else, because nobody had a sleeping problem anymore. So I wanna do. I'm also gonna put in a link for the other frequencies that you have, the different applications of the sounds as well, so people can pick and choose whatever they want. Can we talk a little bit about, it was kind of interesting what you started telling me just before we started recording about menopause, and how menopause can be helped, with frequency. And I just want to do a little caveat here, that can help tremendous, like what Michael was going to talk about. And if it doesn't, if it only works somewhat, right, then you've got to look at other things, like we always talk about hot flashes, get off caffeine, minimize your gluten and sugar. It's going to find profound differences in how you feel. And, just bringing that in as another tool, I think is wonderful, but it's just not as I just don't want anyone Michael, to think that this is a tool. It's like a Tylenol. I take that one pill, while I'm living a toxic life, eating really crappy food, right? And that is, I'm expecting the miracle to happen right there and then. For some people, bless them, might happen. For others, it really works in combination with how you take care of yourself on many other avenues. So let's talk about the frequency and the menopause symptoms.
Yeah, sure. Again, being one of those rare, amazingly happily married man for 31 years, when my wife started to have some unraveling issues, at first I didn't know what was going on, and she didn't know what she was going on. And I think this is really good for your listeners, and especially those that are married. A lot of terrible things happen in a relational way when this can happen on either side, with andropause or menopause. And so at first I felt rejection, and I felt like, oh my God, what's going on? I'm losing my best friend. And then the narcissism makes way to realism that, oh my God, as weird as this is for me, she's losing it. She feels like melted wax, or she can't lose weight. She's unhappy. And so then it was really awesome for me. I'm just giving you a backdrop of what happened. So for me as a man, it suddenly, I always obviously love women, but I had a greater empathy for women that, especially that are going through menopause, because I realized that they're the miserable ones, and they're living in a haunted house. And so it really helped me stretch as a person and as a man, but it also pushed me to try to find out why this particular frequency had such an ability to help with, like I said, to help with the balancing of hormones along with everything. Like I said at the beginning, I never tell people just buy this and it's the cure for everything. For some people it is. For other people, it's just another tool in the toolbox. With that being said, I realized with Lil that you don't think sometimes you make this for other people, and then you're going through something and it's like, hey, dummy, why don't you put that on for yourself? I have to turn it on for her. And I realized that when it was playing, that emotionally she was really, really, really good. And then when the 528 thing started happening that I mentioned earlier on the broadcast, that was such a wake-up call for me, because I realized that this stuff does what I say it does in the book. Like when the people get the book, they'll see that when I go into detail on what each of those frequencies does in a physiological stand, that's exactly where it works. I mean, it's not rocket science, it's science. It's like, that's going to stimulate that. And so if somebody's dealing with, it's such a, as you know better than anyone, it's such a delicate balance. The fact that humans even have any inroads into balancing such a colossal system is amazing. But you are, and I am realizing, and I also found out with Lillian that beside the fact that, she was getting help by the frequencies, but moreover, it was explaining to me why these people were having such an adverse reaction to that particular frequency, because it was overstimulating the hormones to the point where all of their levels were being exacerbated, and it wasn't really helping the problem. So they were able to do what we do with anything else. Take it way, way down until it doesn't bother you anymore. And then, like I said, a month later, I get all of this amazing, I'm still getting amazing email. I have a bunch of it here on the desk from women that said, oh my God, I've never felt what I'm feeling right now. No agitation. My husband isn't making me angry when he comes home from work. I'm sleeping 8 hours a day and not waking up. My hot flashes are gone. No matter what happened, that to me is like the win-win, because I walked through that with Lily for 4 years, and it was super, super hard. And I'll also say that along with your diet, and along with a lot of what you've written in your book, and finding a qualified doctor that really understands bioidentical hormones the right way makes a quantum difference too. And it's helped my wife. I mean, I got my friend back. She's normal and feels great in her skin again. And
yeah. Well, thanks for sharing this. And it's actually what you're describing, like the getting into that kind of a hormonal storm. That's very much the initial phase, the phase before menopause, and that's perimenopause. And that's even more disconcerting, because you're going from having a cycle and normality to some degree to suddenly a total storm when there is no normal is not a term anymore, right? And that's very concerning. That's when we start having a lot of fears of, like, is it cancer? Am I going mental? Is that the Alzheimer that runs in my family, right? I mean, all sorts of fears start coming up, and you don't know what the heck is going on. And so that's wonderful. I mean, the reviews that I'm seeing on Amazon is like everything from kids becoming much calmer, people having, instead of being triggered by the usual thing that the spouse would say, are not responding to things anymore. It's just absolutely wonderful. It's really, really intriguing. And so I've been listening to it a little bit at home. I will be honest, I've been so busy with my book launch and doing podcast after podcast that, like sometimes you want to just be even present with the music. And in all honesty, I just have not had the time to do that. And I fall asleep in like less than 7 minutes, more like 3 minutes. And so, yeah, and I don't wake up in the middle of the night. So sleeping is not my issue. It's quite amazing what your community is saying about and the results of. So truly inspiring. So we're going to have links. You can get Michael's stuff, which is either the sleep program or we'll put another link up for the different conditions or the frequencies. So fascinating, like you have different frequencies for the different conditions there to help people. So that's awesome. Michael, what are some of your final thoughts that you want to impart before we wrap up?
Sure. The one thing that you were just mentioning, we're all relegated to one frequency, and I think that's fascinating. And it was 639, and it has to do with relationships. And it's such a big deal, especially with women that are married and are going through this, and it just, everything goes tornado. 639 Hertz is called the bridge, and it's called the bridge for a reason. It makes a place of commonality where we can find, we can get on the same page for a minute. That frequency, when it plays, if you have children, for example, that are fighting all day long and driving you crazy, if you put that on, you'll watch, they're fighting over a toy, and all of a sudden the one kid just looks and hands the other one the toy, and the fight's over. Spouses, the same thing. I noticed that huge in our family when we were going through the hardest part, that particular frequency. If I had the cognizance to turn it on in time, it stopped a lot of what could have been really horrible arguments during that time. So I think the takeaway for me today, first of all, is that knowing that what I'm sharing really isn't new. It's very, very old, but it isn't a topic that was commonly understood, I would say, frequency and what frequency actually is. I mean, there's been movies called Frequency and they were dramas and whatever, but actually what it is, what it does, how it affects us, how, like breathing air, it's a component and a function that if there was no frequencies, there would be no life. Even your heart, the electrical impulse that keeps your heart beating properly is a frequency. And so I guess that's the most important thing, is to tell your listeners and your friends that there is a lot of science out there, but it's not like a topic that has gained a lot of media because people really didn't understand what it was. So I hope that hopefully my book as well. The book is a lot of fun. I don't know if you read it yet, but it doesn't take very long to read it. You can read it on one segment of a flight. But I've really demystified a lot of the heady information there to make it palpable for people to understand.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's learning something new every day, and that's just really awesome, just to be bringing in additional tools to the toolbox called hormone balance, which can be complex. All right, you guys, links are down below the video, whether you're watching it on Facebook or we'll do a blog post about it as well. So it's all of that is going to be right down below the video. Great having you, Michael. Hit up everybody, try it out. It's a pretty for a pretty low investment. Is this something that can be really so transformative in our life, and something to be shared with as well, like even experimenting with that on the potty, but without not using the sleep ones, of course.
Right. That's a lot of fun. It really is.
Just one thing comes to mind is, it's a lot of times when we have like Thanksgiving, Christmas coming up, whatever Jewish holidays, and when you have families that are typically in a mode of feuds, but also, when we change our diet and we go to a family, a lot of women get attacked for that, saying, oh, is that another fat diet? And so some people really dread going to these kind of family events. And I'm thinking, gosh, next time, bring that speaker with you, play the sounds.
You're reading my mind. That's why I was giggling, is because that's exactly when it's really noticeable, is family functions. Thanksgiving, Christmas is a big one. Yeah. You always have the uncle or the aunt that always causes trouble. You put that music on, and it's a different experience.
Awesome, Michael. Great to have you here, and to happy healing, everyone.
Yeah, be whole. Thank you.